It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old son James was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James has always been a quiet boy. He never had many friends, but he's always had a wild imagination. I was feeding our dog Fido when I thought I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I wasn't sure who it was he could be talking to. Could he have finally made a friend? Being a single mother, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son. James, it's time to come inside. He came inside and sat down at the table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. Hey, James, who are you talking to out there? I was playing with my new friend. I poured him some milk and continued to pry, as any good mother would. Oh? Does your friend have a name? His name's Laughing Jack. Oh? That's a strange name. What does your friend look like? He's a clown. He has long arms and baggy pants and a big swirly cone nose. He always smiles. I realized at this point my son was talking about his imaginary friend. I suppose it's normal for kids his age to have imaginary friends, especially when they have no real kids to play with. It's probably just a phase. That night, I put James to bed as usual. I turned on his nightlight, gave him a kiss, and remembered to shut his door. I remember telling him I love him before shutting the door. It was late, and I soon went to bed myself. That night, I had an awful nightmare. It was dark. I was in some sort of run-down amusement park. I was scared, running through an endless maze of broken-down rides and abandoned game huts. The whole place had an awful look to it. Everything was black and white, and the prized stuffed animals hung from nooses, all with sick, twisted grins stitched on their faces. I felt like the entire park was looking at me, but there wasn't another living thing in sight. Eventually, I started to hear music play. The sounds of Pop Goes the Weasel being played on a squeeze box echoed through the park. I followed the tune until I found the big top. I walked in, unable to stop my legs from moving. I began to sing along, unable to stop. All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought 'twas all in fun. The music stopped right before its climax. The lights in the big top were practically blinding, and all I could see was a small dark silhouette, slowly shuffling towards me. And then another one appeared, and another, and another. I was surrounded. As the figures got closer, I could see they were children. They were all horribly disfigured and mutilated, some missing limbs, some missing eyes, teeth. They enveloped me. They dragged me to the ground and started tearing inside me. As the children tore me apart and I faded away, all I could hear was laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. I woke up in a cold sweat. I looked on my nightstand to see a bunch of James's action figures facing me. I figured James must have woken up early and put these here. I got up, gathered the toys, and went back to James's room. But when I got there, James was sound asleep. I brushed it off and put the toys back in his toy box, and I went downstairs. James came down about an hour later. He was tired and he seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I decided to ask him about the toys. James, did you put the toys in Mommy's room this morning? He just looked down and said, Laughing Jack did it. I rolled my eyes and said, Well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room, okay? James nodded and then went outside to play. I went to chill out on the couch, and I wound up falling asleep. I woke up a few hours later. Shit! I need to go check on James. I was worried because it had been nearly 2 hours and I hadn't checked on him. When I went outside, I couldn't see. James wasn't in the backyard anymore. I was worried and I started calling for him. James! James, where are you? Then I heard a giggle coming from the front yard. I ran, swung the gate open, and I yelled, James, how many times have I told you to stay in the backyard? James? What are you eating? James held out a handful of hard candies in all colors. James? Who gave you that candy? James just stared at me. James, this is very serious. Please tell Mommy where you got that candy. James hung his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart dropped. I grabbed him by arm. I said, James, I've had enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He's not real. Now this is a very serious situation, and I need to know who gave you that candy. I could see my son's eyes start to tear up. But Mommy, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. I rolled my eyes, and I made him throw the rest of the candy away, and we went back inside. He seems to be fine. Maybe I'm just overreacting. After all, he could have gotten it from Tom and Linda next door, or Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'll have to keep a closer eye on my son. That night, I put James to bed, and I went to bed not long after. However, I heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen downstairs. I flipped on the light and bolted downstairs. When I got there, I saw our dog Fido hanging dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and filled with candy, the same type that James was eating earlier that day. I heard another loud crash coming from James's room. I heard him scream. I grabbed a knife and I ran up there with the speed only a parent whose child is in danger could have. I swung the door open, and I saw that everything in James's room had been thrown on the floor. My poor son was sitting in his bed, soiled bed sheets. I picked him up, and I ran next door to Tom and Linda's. Luckily, they were still awake, and they let me use their phone. I called the police, and when they got here, they looked at me as if I was crazy. They told me that someone had probably just gotten in and done this before making a quick escape. I knew that wasn't true. All the doors were locked, and so were all the windows. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next night, I made James stay inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. The rest of the day went by as per usual, and that night, I brought the old baby monitor out from the garage. If anything was to come into James's room tonight, I was going to be able to hear it. That night I put James to bed, and I went to bed as well, taking the largest knife in the house with me. I stayed awake for hours, listening to the baby monitor, to make sure nothing got to my baby boy. After a few hours, I could feel myself drifting off. My baby would be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. Just as I lay my head on the pillow, I heard a soft noise coming from the baby monitor. It sounded like interference, but then it turned into a soft moan. Was James asleep? Then I heard it, the laugh from my nightmare, that horrible laugh. I sprung out of bed and I ran to James's room, and when I opened the door, I felt the warm, thick liquid on my feet. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I tried to look around the darkness and I couldn't see anything. I took a step forward, again feeling the warm, thick, sticky liquid on my feet. Then, James's nightlight turned on, and I could see the utter horror laid out in front of me. James was nailed up on the wall. His stomach was cut open, his eyes and most of his teeth were missing. I threw up. I could hardly believe this was my baby boy. Then, I heard it again. That moan, that desperate, wheezy moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby. In so much pain, barely clinging to life, I threw up again, and as I was wiping the bile from my mouth, I heard a horrible cackle behind me. I turned around to see the fiend responsible, Laughing Jack. He was exactly how James had described him, but nothing like how I imagined him. He was a good 7 feet tall. His arms hung down to the floor, his long, crooked black fingers scraping the ground. His skin didn't look like skin at all. It almost looked like rubber or plastic. His long black hair hung down in tangled knots all around down to his shoulders. His smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth, and he was completely black and white. He laughed again, as if to let me know he was pleased with my reaction to his work, and then he turned around slowly and looked at James. He started laughing even more at the horrific sight. I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" I raised the knife and I charged at the monster and I stabbed down at him. But the moment the knife touched him, he disappeared into a cloud of black smoke. The knife went straight through and pierced James's still beating heart. "No, no, what have I done? My baby, I killed my baby." As I dropped to the ground, "I'm sorry, James. I promised Mommy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James, I'm so sorry." I could hear sirens in the distance growing louder, and as they got closer, I could hear the laughter fading. The trial was short. Insanity. I was placed in the Fruitless House for the criminally insane, where I have been for the past 6 months. It's not so bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing "Pop Goes the Weasel" outside my bedroom door. I'll tell the orderlies about it in the morning.